The New York Knicks, they're in the middle of a rough patch. The team has lost back-to-back games to non-playoff teams this week. They will face another non-playoff team at the Garden tonight as they host the Washington Wizards. So let's talk some Knickerbockers basketball with the team beat writer for the New York Post. My guy, Stefan Bondy, joins me now. Steph, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. Not much. They're finally back home. It's been I think I was on the road for 21 or 23 days,
Ooh.
but they have a nice stretch here. About a week at home. So first time in a while.
Hey, people got to remember, for the beat writers too, like yourself, that is a lot of time on the road, and it is taxing. So we're happy to have you home to get some rest. But Steph, back-to-back losses this week to the Spurs and the Hornets, two teams at the bottom of the standings. Those losses, they've raised real concerns. What's going on with the Knicks right now, and how alarming is this stretch in your view?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it wasn't just that they lost to those two teams. It was that I mean, it felt like they never had a chance after the first quarter. They were trailing by, I think it was, 30 points or something like that, a little over 30 points in that Spurs game. And, the Hornets game, I think after the first quarter, they trailed for the rest of the game. So, really, really discouraging performances. And the obvious answer there is Jalen Brunson is not available. So, I think that when they came after Jalen got injured, they came into that stretch saying, all right, we need to make ourselves better so that when Jalen returns, he's joining a better team. And we've improved in a lot of areas so that when he comes back, we're going to be ready for the playoffs and, they're a better version than when he left. That has not been the case. And, for me, it's predictable because Jalen Brunson is the engine of the team. He's the leader on the court and in the locker room. So, not only did they lose those last two games, but there was a lot of drama, with Mikal Bridges' comments and then the Draymond Green stuff. And there was yelling back and forth on the court between Tom Thibodeau and Josh Hart. So there was a lot going on this recent stretch, and most of it wasn't good.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on, and you kind of mentioned Jalen Brunson's absence, which you absolutely have to talk about regarding the Knicks. But a lot of fans, they're wondering if it's fatigue, injury to Jalen Brunson, is it catching up with the squad? How much of this, in your eyes, is in this skid that we're talking about, is the road heavy schedule that you just mentioned at the top, or the absence of Jalen Brunson, or do you look at it as a combination of both?
A combination of both, and I think the last two games that we've been talking about, the Spurs game and especially the Hornets game, that those were really in the midst of a schedule crunch because what they did was they went on this long road trip on the West Coast and they actually had a couple games there where they had a few days off before the game, so they should have been plenty rested for those games. But you're on the road for so long, you come back for one game against Miami, and they smoke Miami at the Garden, and then you immediately have to go back on the road, switch time zones to the Central Time Zone to San Antonio, and then fly back to the Eastern Time Zone, lose an hour to play Charlotte on a back-to-back. I think those last two games, you can certainly say that mental fatigue and maybe physical fatigue was a factor, but the overriding factor is not having Jalen Brunson on the court.
There's no doubt he not being on the court is having a huge impact on this team. Now we got to tonight with the Wizards. They come to MSG. They've struggled all season long. But with the way the Knicks have been playing recently, can we call this game a must win at this point in the season?
What I called it was it's a can't lose
Mm.
because must win is meaning that if they lose they're gonna fall out of the playoffs or lose an important position in the playoff seeding or what have you. But for the morale of this team, for what we talked about in terms of establishing some sort of confidence for when Jalen Brunson returns and not saying, well, Jalen Brunson is this whole team, and when he comes back, he's going to save us. That is not the mindset that you want from this team. And if you lose to the worst team in the NBA, the Wizards are the worst team in the NBA, and I understand they've gotten a little bit better when they got Chris Middleton and they moved Kyle Kuzma and they played a little bit better after the trade deadline, but they're coming off some brutal losses lately. They are the worst team in the NBA. And if you lose to the second worst team in the East, the Hornets, 2 days later you come home and then lose to the worst team in the NBA and the Washington Wizards, we are having a totally different conversation after that game about where this team is at. this is a perfect opportunity against a terrible opponent to have that get right game. And if they fail to do that, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it's going to be a problem for the fan base. The sky will be falling for sure if they lose to the Wizards tonight. Last thing for me, Steph, if the Knicks are going to bounce back, you called it, could be a get-right game and take care of business against Washington. What are the three biggest keys to victory in your eyes for this game?
Hit your shots, your 3-point shots. I think they haven't been falling, and that certainly is a product of. To me, when Jalen Brunson has the ball and he's the initiator, he creates opportunity. And I know people accuse him of being dribble happy and selfish, but what he does is he makes defenses collapse and they get driving kicks and then they get open 3-pointers. They don't really have that on the team right now. And Mikal Bridges, when he's the initiator, he's also not getting into the paint to the point where he's able to draw defenses in because he's pulling up for a mid-range jumper. And I think that they have to figure out ways to get good 3-pointers. And when they do get these open 3-pointers, they have to knock them down. I know that they said they got good 3-pointers in the Charlotte game. I haven't gone back and looked at the film, but to me, a lot of them were contested, and then the open ones they didn't fall. So, it's a make or miss league. We talk about that all the time, and you have some very capable 3-point shooters out there, and OG Anunoby, and Miles McBride, and Mikal Bridges, and certainly Karl Anthony Towns. They need to knock down their trays. And the other thing is rebounding. I mean, we're talking about a team that was out rebound. They had the twin tower alignment in the San Antonio game with Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson, and they were still out rebounded, and they were out rebounded in the Charlotte game. That wasn't something we talked a lot about last season when they had Isaiah Hartenstein out there and Dante DiVincenzo out there and Julius Randle out there. Now we're talking about it, and I think that team lost some of its edge in the paint by acquiring Karl Anthony Towns. They need to clean that up for sure.
All right, two things he needs to clean up. Make those threes. Do not get out-rebounded. We will see if the Knicks are able to do that tonight against the Wizards. As Steph said, if they lose to the worst team in the NBA, things are not going to be good. That is Stefan Bondy, Knicks beat writer for the New York Post, joining me. Steph, appreciate the time as always. Glad to have you back home. We'll talk soon.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.